Where are we in leadership education? Are business schools getting it done? Are they thriving? I know a bunch of law students wanted to sue law schools because they weren't getting their jobs. Is there going to be a similar bubble at business schools? I know Apple created their own academy. Is that a way of saying they want to bypass business schools? Are the best of business schools behind them, or are they in front of them? What do you think?
So there are a lot of questions about whether the MBA is worth it. Naturally, since I teach at Harvard Business School, I would think the MBA is worth it. But what we really need is more and better leaders. I mean, we are swimming in problems. And I know that what keeps CEOs up at night is not necessarily managing their people, managing their company. There is a little bit of that kind of recurring worry. What really keeps them up at night are the risks that we face, whether it's climate change, because if we don't fix that, there is no business. They do worry about whether they're going to find enough people. They worry about that now. It used to be that people were dispensable, not anymore. So they are worrying about the things, I call it outside the building, not inside the building. MBA programs, so business school, business education, there are a lot of tools that people could learn. But the big thing we need is leadership, and leadership that takes on the problems of the world. And that's what I devote my time to.
Great. You know, when I think of business school, I think of the case study method. How well has that worked? I took 13 classes at Harvard Business School, and I remember the second years when I was a fellow there, and the students from Sloan were very analytical, and they seem more comfortable with the data than the case study method. Is the case study method on the rise? Is it waning? Is there a hybrid? What's the best way to educate on some of these change management issues that you care so much about?
I love the case method. I love it. And if you took 13, our MBA students have 500 in their 2 years. And what it does is it immerses them deeply in problems that don't necessarily have an answer in the case, and they have to figure out the answer. And it's that judgment. And it's the ability to immediately jump in and say, what's important in the context? So I love cases. I write cases all the time, and they keep evolving in terms of what the topics are as the problems of the world change. But there's no better way, and I say that to all the people who want to improve their own leadership. Do cases where there's no clear answer. You have to figure it out. You have to justify it to other people. You have to synthesize the facts, because one of the first characteristics of leaders is the ability to see the context, figure out what's going on, and think their way through to a solution nobody's ever seen before. A solution not just outside the building, outside our current structures, but outside maybe what the world has seen. I mean, innovation is so important, and it's important for leaders.
Great. It used to be Fortune 1000 companies, public companies would hire a leader and they would be able to lead the company. The world is so dynamic these days that sometimes companies commit to a leader and they don't have the skill set for the new things that have just cropped up. How well are companies today, some of the most important companies that we depend on for our economy and the global economy, doing at preparing their leaders to handle change, asking leaders to maybe step off the stage because they may not have the right skill set for the new, pandemic, climate change, whatever the things are that are changing their space?
So I think that companies are doing a better and better job at all of this. I think that leaders are often selected from within, so they're known quantities. In fact, if you want a smoother succession, select them from within. But sometimes they also stay too long. And I can name names. I mean, General Electric, did Jack Welch, who was considered the most famous, best manager of his time, did he stay too long? Because he left a mess for his successor. So sometimes people stay too long. I think in the best organizations I see now, it's really a team effort. I'm finishing a case right now. I can't tell you which company, but it's a very big Fortune 10, I shouldn't say that, but it's a very big company that everybody would know. And it's a team effort. I mean, it's very hard to separate out sometimes whose idea it was. And they are doing dynamic things that are changing how they do business. They're investing in new technology. They're investing in whole new business concepts. They are trying to fix problems like racial gaps in X and Y. They are promoting women like crazy. They're doing all kinds of wonderful things, and you can't attribute it to the CEO. Now, in our case method, we often have, well, the CEO is thinking this, what should the CEO do? But it's not just the CEO, it's a whole set of people that learn how to work together really well. And that's the new leadership. The new leadership is distributed. The new leadership involves collaborations and coalitions. The new leadership involves putting your own ego aside a little bit and listening to other people as well. And I have a new definition for what the E is in CEO. I've said Chief Empathy Officer. And it isn't like empathy just in the fact that you have to sympathize with people. We know that people have many more difficult situations at work if they're working at all. But it's also empathy is that skill of looking outside the building, looking beyond the person, figuring out what else is going on that helps you understand it. So I think the best leaders of the future are not only team players in the old sense of conformity, but they know how to work collaboratively with people who are different.
So let me do a case study here. You and I have a mutual friend, just thought of David Kenny. Was at Akamai, was waiting to be the head. He was president, took too long. And then he was, I think, hired by Weather Channel, and he did remarkable things there. Then IBM brought him in. He was put in charge of the cloud because Weather was part of their strategy. And then he went to Nielsen. And I noticed that he's no longer just the CEO of Nielsen, but CEO and I think Chief Diversity Officer. Tell us him as a case study. What does that trajectory tell you about the kind of current generation of leaders? And then I'm bundling two questions. You mentioned GE. GE was a Fortune 10 company. I know Dennis Damerman, the COO, supported Jack Welch. They were great. They're no longer Fortune 10. I think CVS Health is a Fortune 4 company that wasn't a Fortune 10 company. The way the Fortune 10s have changed in the last 20 years, what do you think that says about where they're heading in the next few years? So two questions there.
First of all, I should say that I'm a big fan of the transformation at CVS, which is CVS Health, and it's no longer your corner drugstore. It is your diversified healthcare company.
And they don't sell cigarettes anymore, too.
They don't sell cigarettes. I mean, I have a lot of respect for what they've done. They have definitely thought outside the building, yet they are using their stores in such creative ways. So that's a great example of leadership. In terms of David Kenny, I was smiling while you were talking because I love David Kenny. I have known him way back through all those incarnations, and I think he's incredibly creative. He understands how to see the future and yet put it in a way that everybody can understand in terms of action. He knows what's core to the company. When he took over Weather Company, it was kind of a little bit of a mixed thing. It had a TV channel, it also had all these digital assets, and meanwhile they were totally ignoring the people who were interpreting the data, the scientists, and he put science at the center. He managed to sell the digital part. He went with it to IBM, where it was Watson. He was head of Watson for IBM. He had that ability to see further. He also knew how to make people feel included on the team. And he had the right combination, or has now, the right combination of tough, decisive. You have to be decisive as a leader. And it's not all a matter of sitting around waiting for consensus. When I talk about collaboration, I don't mean consensus. I mean fast action, support one another, listen to everybody's ideas, and then let's move. So he was very good at that too. I see other people who have that combination. At Comcast, for example, it wasn't the CEO, but it was a senior executive, David Cohen, who's about to be ambassador to Canada for the United States, was also chief diversity officer, because now these people issues are considered so important that it should have the attention of the top people.
Yeah.
And it's not only because it's a legal matter, it's because everybody sees that the future is going to be that ability to reach much more widely for your workforce, treat them more empathetically, understand them, and get them promoted.
Yep.
It's not
So you just mentioned 2 male CEOs. Where are women CEOs in the Fortune 1000? What do you want to share on that topic? I know you broke a lot of ground. You ran Harvard Business Review as a faculty, and I think you were a glass ceiling breaker in many ways. Where are we? Like, why are there so few?
I'm glad you asked that. Because there are still so few, but for example, CVS that we were talking about has a woman CEO just named as the most powerful woman in American business. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the cult of the CEO. I happen to know there's a big team of very talented people there, but they love her and they refer to her as the boss and support her and love her. We've had women CEOs, it's way too slow. It is so excruciatingly slow. And so where women are leading, it's much more likely to be in smaller companies and their own startups, but it's got to happen because the pipeline is bursting with people who have a lot of talent, as long as they're not discouraged, as long as we continue to support them. And the support, by the way, isn't just giving them opportunities at work. One of my favorite lines that's been quoted by Sheryl Sandberg and many others when asked what men could do to advance women's leadership, my answer was the laundry.
Love it.
Because the one thing that has not changed, even as more women are advancing to top leadership positions, is the household division of labor. Who does the work at home? And I think it's one reason why women are not returning to work at a higher rate than men. So we have to trace that link between what goes on at home to how easy it is to be a CEO. Indra Nooyi, who was another woman CEO of PepsiCo, a terrific leader who I appreciate a lot for her attempt to make it a healthier, health-oriented company. Tough when your main product is sugar water, but she worked on it. She also talks a lot about her household responsibilities and her feeling about her children. And so we have to acknowledge the importance of family. And that's a major debate right now nationally, how much family leave, how much parenting leave. And it shouldn't be just a women's issue, but until we crack it, it's going to hold some women back, unfortunately.
So Paul Revere, 245 years ago, we're about to hit the 250 mark. Where is the United States on competitive and innovation? You just mentioned Canada. Some people saw the pandemic and saw what China was able to do. One party. Is American business in trouble? Can something good come out of this period? What's your next book on to help solve some of these challenges?
So I think American business is in pretty good shape. I think it's American institutions in the society that are not in such great shape. I mean, in the pandemic, by the way, we had a different regime. We've had regime change, but in the pandemic, the government response was not so hot. The national response and even some of the state responses. But the business response was very strong. I'm just finishing an article for Harvard Business Review about cross-sector coalitions that includes the private sector response to the pandemic, about 1,000 companies and health systems getting together to do things like make PPE. This was in March of 2020, to make PPE, to shift manufacturing, to get databases to the governors. So it was a lot of tech companies as well as a lot of health systems, the private sector working together. So I think business is doing pretty well. I think corporate profits are high. There are many arguments about why they're high and predatory pricing, for example. But I do know that private sector leaders know how to mobilize politics-free to get certain things done, and they are now wanting to solve the problems of the world. Climate is seen as a business issue, which it certainly is unless you're a fossil fuel extractor. Then it's also a business issue on the other side. But I think these questions really bother business leaders, and so that's where I started. My latest book, it's not my newest, the one I'm writing now, but it's Think Outside the Building. You have to look beyond current conditions to see how you can make a difference in the world.
So you disrupted Harvard Business School by creating a program for people, I call them post-economic, I don't know if that's how you refer to them, but people who are very successful and want to have another chapter on life and wanted to contribute and have impact. You ran that for a decade, some of the most influential, successful people. What did you learn from starting that program? And for our audience, some people are going to be Gen Z. I don't even know what's after Gen Z, but for the future generation leaders who we need to take on some of these challenges, what advice do you have to them to try to meet their potential, to try to be impact players instead of wearing blinders and being not part of the solution?
John, another really good and also very complex question. So first of all, back to the program I founded with colleagues.
I'm congratulating you. Yeah.
Thank you. At Harvard, for people, we said late career stages, a new stage of higher education, because our assumptions about what people do at which age have been completely disrupted. And I saw so many people leaving companies, leaving investment banks, leaving their careers and saying, what do I do now? I want to fix the world. And we said, let's harness that energy. And one thing I learned was there's a lot of them, and they know that their lives are enriched by purpose and meaning. And so we talked about going to courses on campus, not golf courses, if I got that kind of course to course, and that they had a lot to give. They had a lot, not only they could mentor the younger students, but also they could start ventures. They could use their capabilities that they had earned in a lifetime of their career to do something major to change the world. My favorite example, his name is Doug Rao. He was president of Trader Joe's, a company that a lot of people love. He wanted to solve the hunger problem in America, and his first thought was, he could get bread that was going to otherwise go to waste at, big grocery chains. He knows the Whole Foods people very well. When I talked to him about it, I thought it was a very stale idea. You get that? Okay, sorry about that.
No,
but
good humor.
But so he did broaden his thinking. He learned that food waste is a major source of methane, which is exactly the greenhouse gas we're trying to get rid of now. Mm-hmm. He wanted to do something about that environmental problem that comes from food waste, plus the fact that there's still hunger in America and people who can't really afford nutritious food, which is often more expensive than less nutritious food. And he put those issues together, and he realized a lot of food is being thrown away that is perfectly nutritious, and he started stores dedicated to that. And they're not just stores for low-income people. All of us can go shop in his stores. He now has a number of them in the Boston area. He's going to go to other cities. It's called Daily Table. And it's a brilliant idea. And it combines what he knew from his retail career with his sense of purpose as an advanced leader who thinks outside the building. So I just love his story, and I've got a million more.
Well, you're a national treasure. I'm glad that Harvard snagged you and you made it your home. I know you're part of that club. Thank you for being part of the TEDxBoston club as we reimagine ourselves. It's thinkers like you that have so much to give and create ripples. And thank you. And you've been Rosabeth.
Thank you.